Hello, everyone. My name is John McKay. I'm the Member of Parliament for Scarborough-Guildwood, and I'm joined by my good friends, Mitzi Hunter, who is the MPP for Scarborough-Guildwood, and Paul Ainsley, who's the councillor for Ward 43, I think it is.
24.
So, oh, okay. Well, there you know.
24.
Good old 24. That was a really good number, Paul.
I like 43 when we had more councillors, but
that's true.
I'd have
That's
to talk
true.
to the Premier about that.
You were 43 at one point in your life. We are joined by Zakir Patel, the trustee for whatever he's trustee for, and Nancy Crawford, who is the trustee for the Catholic Board. And we thought that it would be very timely indeed for us to talk about all the things that are happening in education, especially as parents are facing the return to school scenario that is happening very quickly. So we've asked the trustees to come on to this program and talk to our respective constituents about the latest information that they have on the safe return to schools. But before I ask Zakir and Nancy to introduce themselves, I'm going to ask Mitzi and Paul to say a few words. We anticipate that Paul and I will not greatly participate in this town hall because this is largely a provincial and trustee issue under the Ministry of Education. So with that, let me ask Mitzi to say a few words and possibly at one point give us an update on the latest thinking in the province, and then move to Zakir and then to Nancy. Mitzi.
Thanks, John, and hello, everyone. It's great to be back at our live town hall session with you. And we're going to, I believe tonight, have a little bit of an extended session so we can have a full conversation on our back to school plans for all of our students in Scarborough-Guildwood. And it's great to be here with you, John, as our federal member. And I have to say thank you to Prime Minister Trudeau for the $2 billion he injected into education across Canada. 763 million of that is coming to Ontario schools and Ontario students, and some of that into the TDSB and the TCDSB, as well as our 2 French boards as well. I want to also thank Paul for being here, and the 3 of us have been doing these town halls. I believe this is our 5th one, and it's just a really great opportunity and a forum to connect with our community. So we want to answer as many of the questions as possible. We know that school is about to start. There are some boards that are starting, in fact, already. Teachers are in the classroom, caretakers are in the schools prepping, and we know that time is out. Time's up on this one. Ready or not, school is going to start. And one of the things that I know is on the minds of many parents, because they've stopped me as I've been out and about in the riding, and that is the safety of students. And we know that Scarborough has COVID that is still circulating in the communities, and we don't want to see any of that going into our schools for our students and for the education workers, the staff, and the teachers that are there. So tonight's conversation is really designed to answer as many questions as possible to put parents' minds at ease. And school is something that every child has a right to here in Ontario and in Canada. And we want to make sure that we focus on student success and student learning and keep everyone as safe as possible. So that's why we are joined by our 2 trustees, and hopefully we'll get to as many answers as possible as we can tonight. So thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, Mitzi. And Paul, do you want to say a few words?
Yep. Yep, thanks, John. As the city councilor, I believe in strong, vibrant communities. Yourself and Mitzi and I have had many town hall meetings as we try and make sure people, our residents, are well informed of what's happening during the COVID pandemic as we're moving closer to the school year. As we're talking about education this evening, I want to thank our public school trustee, Zakir Patel, and our Toronto Catholic District School Board trustee, Nancy Crawford. We all work together more or less as a team for the people of Scarborough-Guildwood, and I'm looking forward to the town hall meeting this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Zakir, do you want to say a few words, and then we'll pass it over to Nancy?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Zakir Patel. I'm your TDSB trustee for Scarborough-Guildwood. I'm also joined today by TDSB staff, Cheryl Robinson Petrosini, and our superintendent, Kurt McIntosh. And I'm waiting to hear from the Consted. As many as questions they have, we are here to answer the questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Zakir. Nancy.
Thank you very much, MP McKay. And Nancy Crawford, your trustee for what we call Ward 12 for the Toronto Catholic District School Board. And here tonight, very pleased to be here. Thanks for organizing this to talk about safe return to education in person and in distance. We're offering both ways to learn, and I'm looking forward to your questions. And I am joined by Dan Koenig, our Associate Director of Academic Affairs this evening, because there's so much to know and so much is changing quickly. Okay. So thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Nancy. Appreciate that. Appreciate everybody. And let's get right to the questions, because this is what we're here for, to try and respond to the questions. And maybe I just say to both trustees, when you want to direct the question to one of your colleagues there, if you just kind of let us know, so that and introduce them as well. So the first question is, will the city run licensed childcare centers in schools in the reopening? So who wants to take that question? Zakir, Nancy?
Go ahead, nope. Zakir.
Hi, Paul. I'll direct this question to Cheryl Robinson.
Sharon? Has Sharon disappeared?
Cheryl's there. Just unmute Cheryl.
I'm there. Good evening. We have a number of childcare centers in our schools. We understand the importance, the incredibly important service that childcare play for families. So it is our intention to have them operating. Having said that, each operator is going to need to look at how they're going to be able to implement the safety protocols that we have in place. So it's difficult to say for every location. We have over 300 of them, whether or not they will all be up and running. But please stay in contact with your school. If you have any questions about this, the school principal can let you know. But that is certainly the goal.
Thanks, Cheryl. What about you, Nancy? Do you have anything to add to that question?
I think it's very similar. We definitely are going to have childcare centers open where possible. And Mr. Koenig, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Thank you, Nancy. And it's the same for Toronto Catholic. We have a lot of shared facilities as well for childcare. So they're going to be up and running. And our understanding is that they will be back to normal numbers as of the start of school. That and again, our before and after school programs as well will be up and running. And again, it depends on the operators and their ability to staff and to ensure that those protocols are being followed. The only delay will be the ministry, the ON centers, where the family literacy centers. There's a bit of delay, and they will be going virtually to begin with. But we hope as time moves on that we'll be able to invite them into the school setting as well.
Okay. Now the next question is a bit.
Sorry, John, and I just wanted to jump in with on the city side. We do have 12 school-based daycare centers that we are running. 8 are currently open. We're going to have 4 more open in September. They might be operating on slightly reduced hours, but our goal by the end of September is to have all 12 open.
Okay, so in light of that, this second question may be a touch redundant, but I'll ask it anyways. Which city-run licensed childcare centers have successfully opened in Scarborough-Guildwood? Which ones are set to reopen, and which will, if any, will remain closed? Who wants to take that question?
Yeah, I think I answered that one, John, but if people want to, if they have some concerns about their city-run childcare center, they can contact my office either by email or phone, and we'll deal with any concerns or issues. But as I said, by the end of September, we expect to have all the city-run daycare centers in the schools open.
Now, are all of the daycare centers in the schools city-run?
We have 12. In our schools, and then we have another, I believe there's another 37 school-run daycare centers around Scarborough-Guildwood.
So 12 are run by the city, but the balance are run in schools, but the balance are run outside of schools?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And what's the story on them?
So our goal is a very similar situation. Our goal is to have as many of them open as possible. We're following, all of our daycare centers are following the protocols that have been outlined by the Toronto Medical Officer of Health. And so, you know, things will be a little bit different when you're dropping your children off, but we do have a set of parameters that we're going to make sure parents are very well aware of when it comes to how we're operating. The protocols when your child is dropped off. If there's a child that becomes ill while they're in the daycare center, we have a set of parameters as well that staff will be following to ensure that if a child becomes ill, that they receive prompt medical attention.
So, are any of the schools, and this would be for Zakir or for Nancy, are any of the elementary schools in Scarborough-Guildwood considered to be high risk?
I'll start, John.
Mm-hmm.
Two of the Toronto Catholic elementary schools are considered to have higher incidence of COVID. So in the motions that we have put into place that staff is acting on, we have designated that the services, increased teaching staff, and safety protocols will be given to the areas and the schools where there's more difficulty first. So we have a priority order that the schools in greatest need will be serviced first.
And which schools are those?
So if, to the best of my understanding, the two of greater concern or greater cases in the area surrounding them would be St. Barbara and St. Boniface.
And for those of us who are not familiar with addresses, where would they be?
St. Boniface is at Kingston Road and Markham Road.
Mm-hmm.
And St. Barbara is at Eglinton, east of, at least east of McCowan, perhaps a little bit further.
Okay, because Scarborough has been a bit of a hot spot for COVID outbreaks early on in the pandemic at a couple of the long-term nursing homes, and it would be unusual if there wasn't a higher risk in some locations. So,
John, it still is a hot spot in some areas. The Toronto Public Health has a map, and one can look at the interactive map. And it clearly shows a darker area for Woburn community, which has a higher level of COVID that's been detected, as well as the Guildwood area. And so, you know, we know that if there is virus circulating in the community, and that puts those schools and those facilities at higher risk of COVID, which is a concern. So hopefully, Zachary, you can speak to what's happening with TDS.
Yes, you know, John, we take most of our directions from Toronto Public Health, right? And the first time when the maps came out, and there was a lots of concern in women community, and we had around 5 to 6 schools, if I remember. And then I think after 2 days or 3 days, Toronto Public Health came to us and said that women is not at high risk now, and that's what started a good conversation with Toronto Public Health, that what's going on, why there's 2 sets of information, like one for Toronto Catholic is something different, and for Toronto District School Board it's something. So what we came to know by this Friday, they say that women is not as much as affected as northwest corner of Toronto, and it's sad. I mean, the way they give the analogy of all this data, and they say how many cases per neighborhoods, and it's kind of, it's challenging. And let's, like Mitzi said, that if you look at the maps, they have provided the new maps, and you can figure out. But right now, according to the Toronto Public Health, to TDSB, we don't have any schools in Woburn or Guildwood as a high-risk schools. So most of the resources are going towards northwest of Toronto.
Do you think that's true? Does you know, given the difficulties with the data, is it a little naive to say that the Catholic Board has identified 2 schools in particular that may be at higher risk, but the Toronto District Board hasn't actually identified any specific school in the Scarborough-Guildwood area that's at higher risk? That sounds somewhat less than credible.
I agree with you, and I had a good lengthy chat with staff about this, and again they say it's a direction from Toronto Public Health, and we are following that, because this is exactly when I questioned them when I saw TCDSB map, right? And I say, you know what? One of my TDSB school is surrounded by, I mean, 1 TCDSB school and 4 TDSB schools are surrounded by TCDSB schools. So how can this school not be at high risk?
Yeah.
And why this is at high risk, right? And so this is the, I can see a sad part that we have to take most of our directions from TPH and provincial governments. And it's kind of back and forth information coming here and there. And I still, as a trustee and as a local resident, cannot grasp this information, that they have one set of information for TCSB is different than TDSB.
Yeah, John, if I could also say, you know, Zachary is right that when you look at the maps and the decision that Toronto Public Health has made, the northwest corner of the city is definitely a higher risk when it comes to COVID hotspot, and that's been persistent throughout the pandemic. But Scarborough is also, based on the Toronto Public Health map, deemed a high risk hotspot area, and why that's not translating into the schools, I do agree, is a question mark, and parents and students need that assurance that their community and their schools are not at high risk. One of the things that I've called for with the Minister of Health is to have surveillance testing in areas like Scarborough, so that we have an increased level of testing before school and in the early start of school. And that's on a voluntary basis. It does require the provincial government to put more resources into, say, for instance, Scarborough Hospital to do pop-up testing and make testing more available, even if those symptoms are not there, because we know that for younger children, the symptom, they could have the virus, they could be carrying the virus, but unless they are tested, you don't see the symptoms. And so the proactive surveillance testing is something that I believe is needed for our communities in Scarborough, particularly such as Woburn and Guildwood, that have previously been seen as hotspots.
If you were listening to this this program and you're sending your kid back to school, I guess, a week tomorrow. And it wouldn't be of great comfort to say that the trustee was not entirely satisfied with the information that was available to him about what schools are hotspots and what are not hotspots. Is there anything, and I'll bring everybody in on this conversation, is there anything useful that we as elected officials should do to bring a little bit more certainty to what schools are thought to be at higher risk than others? I'll start with Zakir. Is there anything useful that you think your other elected colleagues could do in order to help out with this situation? Zakir?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, John. So
That's right. You've got the same mute problem the rest of us have. Yeah.
So this is the challenge we face as a trustee, because community is hearing from 3 different levels of governments and 3 different health agencies are working on this.
Yeah.
Everyone talks different thing. But end of the day, it's the Toronto District School Board or TCDSB. Everything comes down to them, right? But like, again, I say it's, if TPH, okay, I can take out federal government out of this, but if TPH and provincial health agency, if they can work together, I think this problem can be resolved very easily.
Okay. Well, I think it's in our mutual interest that our constituents, our mutual constituents, have the best possible information. Does Paul or Nancy, to a lesser extent, because the Catholic Board has identified specific schools, Paul, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, John, I just think, and I've said this from day one, that, you know, Toronto Public Health has a set of standards that they need people to follow, that they've done a series of testings, like Woburn was identified as a priority high testing area based on testing that was done from January to May, and then testing that continued to be done, and results from that area from May to August was seen as less of a danger area. But, you know, it's still, you know, any school needs to be looked at. Toronto Public Health also looks at the school population and the size of the buildings when it determines who's more at risk and needs to be looked at. But first and foremost, Toronto Public Health, very comprehensive list of guidelines and measures that are taken in place. And we expect parents, to the best of their ability, to follow those guidelines, staff and daycare operators to follow those guidelines. And that includes very comprehensive set of rules if a child is identified as having COVID or possibly having COVID. And I think first and foremost, if we're going to deal with that properly, the guidelines need to be followed.
Okay. So let's...
if I may...
jump in.
Sorry, excuse me. I think
Nancy,
our focus is best put on the safety that we are putting into place, the procedures and the protocols that we will be following with every student, every teacher, every visitor to the school. We really have worked long and hard at figuring these things out, and it will be a new school experience. But at the same time, we are living in a very different world right now, and it's new procedures, new behaviors, new ways of moving in the school that we need to help our students learn. And that's what staff are in the schools right these next 3 days. There's training for staff September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Increased caretaking staff have been hired. I think that we can return to school safely, and it needs everybody's participation and everybody's commitment. But I'm very optimistic. And I really believe that our students need the best possible protocols, procedures, and the best possible education that we can give them. It's time.
Well, let me ask another difficult question. I don't know why I should be asking law balls here. This is not the House of Commons after all. These are serious concerns that parents have, and one of the concerns that came up
And rightfully so.
And rightfully so, exactly. I at one point was have 5 kids, so they're thankfully not going back to school. But at one point they were, and I would be very, very concerned about sending them into a situation. Now, in this morning's media was a story about unions launching lawsuits on the basis of worker safety, and they represent administrative staff and caretaking staff and teachers and things of that nature. Now, here we have a week before the opening of school, and unions launching lawsuits. I'd be interested in either of the trustees' opinion about what those lawsuits actually mean, and whether there is some significance and may end up disrupting or potentially disrupting the already difficult return to school. Nancy or Zakir,
Sure.
Either one.
I'm happy to begin. The staff have every right to express their concerns about safety, and all staff, whether it be teachers, administrators, secretaries, caretakers, and so that's what they're doing through their associations. This is the right thing for them to be doing, and hopefully it will be resolved. And their concerns will be lessened because we are, to the extent of the funding and the resources that we have, we're making everything as safe as possible. And, I would invite Mr. Koenig to comment if he knows more about the labor board application, I think, that happened today.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. I don't know the specifics of the labor board. What I can tell you is that since the March break, we've met weekly with our union partners. So we have had, regular conversations, clear communication between the two parties, really working at a local level to work out the concerns and the considerations related to a return to school. So I think there are things happening at a provincial level with the unions as well. But at the local level, they are our partners. They're key people that will allow for a good return, safe and healthy return to school. So we need to have them on board. We need to have them involved, and we need to listen to them. And I think that's the key point that I would raise from here is just at the local level in the City of Toronto and Catholic schools, we're working with our union partners on a regular basis to address all of the concerns that they have.
Zakir?
Yes, John, and I'll echo the voice of Nancy and Dan. At the local level, it's our responsibility to take all the measures for our staff. That includes everyone. And I think what happened this morning, I think it's between province and the unions right now. But so far, we know there's no disruption. The school is on for 15 September so far. So we are on so far. I don't see any disruption now.
Yeah, again, looking at it from the viewpoint of a potential or a parent sending a child back to school, and the trustees are saying, no, we're taking all the necessary measures to make sure that your child will be safe, and simultaneously there's a lawsuit going on where the teachers in effect are saying this procedure violates worker safety. You could forgive a parent for being a little confused.
Well, John, I think that Dan's point of a weekly meeting with his local union partners and seeing them as partners for a safe return to school is very instructive when you raise this issue. Does the province at a provincial level have a weekly meeting that should have been happening all summer long as we prepare for a safe return to school? That's not happening. Many of the provincial representatives for the teacher unions and the federations have said that they hear about decisions that the province is making for a return to school through the media. They are not consulted, and they're not given a space where they can provide input. And I think that that is a mistake that's been made on the part of the government, because, you know, these partners are the experts, them and their members, in terms of what is required for a safe return to school. And so it is unfortunate that the unions feel that they have to use the procedure of law to be heard, because they're not even listened to. And at this point, everyone has to focus on the common interest, which is to keep education workers and students safe as they go back to school to learn and to provide that instructional learning. And if they feel that that's not happening, they have to have a forum in which to make the government listen. You know, one of the very contentious points is the class sizes. Even, you know, Toronto Public Health and other public health experts have said that maintaining social distancing is something that is important in a COVID environment where the virus can easily spread. And there is a concern that there is not a cap of 15 on primary grades for class sizes, the elementary levels. And so there are legitimate concerns that are there that need to be dealt with, and the forum is to take it to court in order for to the Labour Board for it to be heard and for the government to listen. It's an unfortunate reality of the relationship, but it also is a forum in which the facts can be.
I don't want to belabor the point, but, you know, Dan's done everything right with his weekly meetings and keeping everybody on side and all trying to go in the same direction and maximize the safety for everyone. But all of his good work may well be swept aside by virtue of the fact that the unions and province are not seeing things the same way. So this is kind of a background issue. Again, we're playing in the minds of any parent, I should think. But I just want to pick up and I don't know whether Mitzi, you want to take this question, but it's someone has said, well, why is it that 1 meter of physical distancing is acceptable for students, but the provincial standard is 2 meters?
And the reality is that it's not acceptable. We know that young people, children, spread the virus, and they get infected with the virus, and in some cases without symptoms. So it makes it a really precarious situation. So it is not acceptable to have a shorter distance. One of the things that the school boards are doing is making sure that students will wear masks. That's a mandatory requirement that the province has put forward. That will limit the spread, and also all of the protocols, the public health protocols, are followed. But I think the challenge that we have with our schools is that we haven't put enough resources, despite the fact that our government has invested $763 million in Ontario for a safe back to school, and boards have dug into their reserve funds as well. That there does need to be more investment in making sure that there is the opportunity for physical distancing, and we can only achieve that with smaller class sizes. Maybe taking some classes in different environments if the schools are crowded. And I know the City of Toronto has opened up library spaces, park spaces, and recreational spaces to the schools. And, you know, in order to do that, you need more teachers, more staff, and more supplies. So it requires an investment in order to get to that 2 meter distancing that public health has said is really the ideal. But if you can't make the 2 meter distancing, you have to wear a mask to limit the spread.
So I'll let Zakir and Nancy talk about that in a minute, but I also wanted to get Nancy's and Zakir's views on what their respective boards are doing about the, not the tension, but the online learning versus the in-person learning, and what the latest, if you will, process is going to be. Why don't I start with Zakir? What's the latest on online learning as opposed to in-class learning?
Hi, Paul. And hi, John. Sorry, I'll put Kurt McIntosh on this, right? Because he's our very up-to-date guy, and he has the latest information.
Okay.
Well, I'll try. Well, this is the latest piece that we have. Although things are changing, or it was changing quite a bit over the past 2 weeks, what we have settled on within the last little bit is that elementary school students, as we all know, will be engaged and involved in the face-to-face encounter with our students. And sorry, I should put my camera on. And we also know, sorry, here.
You're probably much better looking with your camera on.
Yeah, I don't know. You can judge now.
Oh, okay. You're right. Yeah.
As I was saying before, as we're engaged, all elementary students will be attending school face-to-face with adjusted class sizes, depending on where within the city you are. One of the biggest challenges that we've gone through, and it is dealing with the compliance or safety guidelines outlined by Toronto Public Health. Secondary school students are required by ministry, I'm going to say edict, rule of law, to engage in a 1:15 ratio. And this has created a situation where our students will be attending school on alternate days for 3 hours and 45 minutes, getting face-to-face, along with synchronous, which is basically asynchronous online learning as they're engaged in alternate days within our system. Presently,
so Kurt, let me just stop you there just so I understand it. So the high school kids, every second day they go to school, and the days that they're not in school, they're expected to be online learning.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Absolutely.
And now, what about middle school? So where the kids are beyond 6, but not in high school.
So within the TDSB, we've engaged in a survey which went out last week, Wednesday, and closed on Saturday, where we're giving families an opportunity to choose a virtual school opportunity if they feel unsure or they feel the kids are not ready to attend school, a brick and mortar building, face-to-face. And so we've engaged in the survey, which are giving us results which we're looking at and compiling presently, where students would be involved in the virtual learning opportunity, if that is what the parents choose. Or
so this is virtual learning 5 days a week.
That's correct. 5 days a week, 300 instructional minutes a day, and this is the opportunity that parents may choose and want to connect with. If not, they'd be turned on and they'd be involved in a regular day school experience as it traditionally is set up. Okay,
every day, Monday to Friday, grades 1 day in school.
Correct. Okay. And on the elementary panel.
I do want to emphasize one point that Kurt made, and that's the asynchronous synchronous learning. That is with an instructor, a teacher, interacting in real time with those high school students, because we also need to pay attention to the quality of education here as well. And we want to make sure that there is attendance being taken, there is assessments being done, and that real learning is happening. And I know that's a concern for parents. So even though there's a mix of in-class instruction and online, that online component is still going to be led by a teacher or an ed worker.
Nancy, do you want to jump in on that? Is there any substantive difference between the way TDSB is handling things in the Catholic Board?
Thanks, John. There are a lot of similarities, of course, because both boards are meeting the ministry requirements of 300 minutes per day and 225 minutes. This is for grades 1 to 8. 225 daily minutes of synchronous learning, which means that it is video or text or there's something else that describes it too. Maybe Mr. Koenig will help with that in a minute. But we are also creating, for those parents who would like their children to be learning remotely, a virtual school, a complete school devoted to virtual learning. So this is very exciting. And please, Mr. Koenig, go ahead and tell everyone a bit about it.
Sure, thanks, Nancy. So, the ministry, we had a lot of issues related to synchronous learning when we started after March break till the end of June, right? There were lots of issues, lots of inconsistencies. So the ministry passed a policy memorandum that dictated, okay, if you're involved in virtual learning, 225 minutes for grades 1 to 12 would be real-time learning, and then 180 minutes for kindergarten. So with our virtual school, we're staffing it like a regular school. We will have a superintendent in charge, a principal, vice principals. We're looking at gathering teachers right now in order to staff that, again, adhering to class caps. But that virtual school will be a school. All of the assessment and evaluation as per the ministry programs related to that will be followed. There will be report cards, et cetera, et cetera. So all the intricacies that you would see in a face-to-face are going to be part of a virtual school set up, even to the point where we may have a parent council associated with the virtual school. Right now, our numbers are about 18,000 students preliminary for the virtual school out of 90,000 students. So it's a significant undertaking at this point in time to not only restaff our face-to-face, but to staff our virtual school.
So that's 20% of your board is going to be virtual and 80%, for want of a better term, real. That's quite extraordinary.
In person.
My goodness.
I did ask the trustees or the staff, the board staff, to comment on this because the virtual school, it is exciting, as Nancy said, but there are some differences where the students may not know the other students who they will be going to school with virtually, or the teacher or those who are providing instruction. So can you talk about that a little bit? Because I do think parents will want to know what to expect.
Before you get to that, I just want to know whether the TDSB is going down a parallel path. Zakir, is the Toronto board doing the same thing?
Cheryl has more information, John.
Okay, Sharon.
Cheryl, backed up by Kurt. Yes, we are going down a similar road as well. We're looking at creating a virtual school. And I think one of the first things I wanted to position, John, is when we start talking about digital or online, we've had some time to really consider this and to learn from what happened in the spring. So when we went into quarantine, we were sort of thrown into that situation, and we didn't really expect it. We've been doing a lot of planning, a lot of careful consideration about, the positive opportunities that are in front of us because of this quarantine and what's happening now. And so we're planning this virtual school with all of those things in mind, recognizing the importance of mental health and well-being, and that's got to be fostered. That'll be part of the professional learning that all staff, principals and teachers and support staff are engaged in the next few days. And we're going to be really supporting teachers on building community in this virtual. But I just wanted to distinguish between what happened in the spring, which we are calling, we in the TDSB, we are calling remote learning. And that is not what we're calling what's going to happen now. We're being very deliberate about the terminology. It's digital learning or virtual school or online learning. So we recognize that there are some things that make a school successful. And so if you go in person and you've got community building and all of these great things happening, we're going to be doing that for those students who are attending online as well.
Cheryl, so are you and Dan talking about the same thing? Like, would I be able to distinguish between the virtual school and TDSB and the virtual school and the Catholic Board?
Yeah, we're talking about the same thing. And I'm just saying the importance of language is really important because, to be honest, not everyone had the absolute best experience with what happened in the spring. And we did call that remote learning. So we want to move away from that because we want parents to know we're planning for this. That this will look different than it did in the spring in terms of assessment, in terms of attendance, that sense of accountability, building community. Wherever possible, John, we're going to be putting students from the same school, we're going to be grouping them together in the virtual as much as possible. But all of this is dependent on our registration, which is happening now. So we have a pretty good guess from the surveys we did previously for how many students we expect. But until we have the actual registrations completed, which will be in the next couple of days, registration actually happened on the weekend. So now it's compiling all of that information. We anticipate that we're actually going to be creating 4 elementary virtual schools and 1 secondary virtual school in the TDSB. So,
and are your numbers? So are your numbers similar to the Catholic Board? 20% of your student population is going to be virtual?
The last number I heard is approximately, we have a pretty big range. We have anywhere from 45,000 to 60,000 that we're expecting. As you could hear from what I said we're going to be creating, we have a lot more interest in elementary, so that we're going to be able to create 4 elementary schools. And not as much interest, but still a lot of interest, strong interest from secondary. I can't speak to the exact percentage.
Yeah.
Mike, if I could just, I'd like to put a fine point on this. It's 4 elementary and 1 high school for the board, not just for the ward.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And
the school board.
Yeah, I've been sent a question here. Obviously, somebody's listening online, and the question is: which schools in Scarborough will have dedicated public health? Sorry, there's a problem with not reading the question in advance, so that you reading it because it's a good question, but it's not quite quite on the subject matter that we were just discussing. So I apologize for that, but let me just go back to. If you will, the law of unintended consequences, and one of the laws of one of the issues that come up with virtual schools, particularly among the younger children, is that all of the social learning that is so important to the integration of a citizen to be, shall we call him or her? How is that going to happen in a virtual setting? Okay, that was an easy question. Do you want me to ask you a difficult one now? So I give the difficult questions to Zakir. Zakir, what do you think? Okay, Zakir, get off the mute thing.
Yes, John, we all know, there are lots of questions and answers, and it's not an easy fix. There is no easy answer to anything. You do virtual, you do in class. So there are challenges in all of those. How can I put it? I really don't know. I'm a parent, 4 kids in the public board. I have in and out questions every single day.
Yeah.
And there's no set answer to that. And I have to make a difficult choice as a parent. And I know there are lots of community members, lots of parents out there. They have to make a difficult choice, but the choice has to be made now, right? And is the virtual run model a great model? Maybe yes, but not for me probably. And those are the vice versa things. So I don't know if I have answered your question correctly, but
You haven't, but that's all right.
right,
I think in that respect, I don't know that there is actually an answer, but let me get back to the questions that people are asking as opposed to politicians asking. So which schools in Scarborough will have dedicated public health nurses allocated to them? And is school population a factor?
Great.
Who wants to take that one? Zakir, Nancy?
I can start, John.
Or I was thinking that since it's a public health issue, I wonder whether it's Paul. But anyways, Nancy, you're back here.
I welcome comments from both Dan and Paul. It's my understanding that we won't have a dedicated on-site all the time public health nurse for each school, but they will be ready to be deployed to any school that needs them very quickly.
Yeah. And
so go ahead.
I'll just say, just to supplement what Nancy was just saying, Toronto Public Health, we don't have enough public health nurses to dedicate to any one specific school, but we will be focusing in on schools where there are any issues, where there might be an outbreak. As I said earlier, there is a very detailed list of parameters that schools need and daycares need to follow, and the same parameters and guidelines if there's a student or students that are identified with COVID.
Zakir?
Zakir on mute.
Zakir is on mute again.
Hi, John. As Nancy said, there's no nurses are on standby. It's like we have to contact Toronto Public Health if something goes wrong. And this is where Toronto Public Health takes over the school or something goes wrong, and we follow their directions. So no, the answer is there's no set of nurses assigned to any schools. It's
Okay.
Toronto Public Health.
So here's another question live right from somebody who's listening to us. What is being done with the HVAC systems within schools? Are there plans for air quality tests? So let me start with you, Zakir, and we'll go to Nancy.
Yes, John. So staff is looking into all those HVAC system and ventilation issues, and I think Toronto District School Board and the facility staff is taking this very seriously, and it's a safety concern for everybody. Not during this time. Even before pandemic, this was a concern. This is not something which came up now, and we all know that how much is the cost of fixing the school, and it's always getting up. It has never gone down, and this is an ongoing issue. But now it has came up on the surface, and staff is looking into it very diligently. And safety of the kids will not be compromised. That's the assurance we have been given, and we will look into that.
Nancy?
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, our facilities staff are very busy checking everything out from windows to filters to portable air purification systems. And we are purchasing as quickly as we can and installing as quickly as we can. So the other aspect of this is taking advantage of the fall months and having activities for students outdoors as much as possible. It will not only be good for air quality. It will be better for mask breaks, as we're calling them, opportunities for students to have a break from wearing their mask. And Toronto Catholic did go along and support. We are supporting Toronto Public Health's recommendation that all students from kindergarten to grade 12 wear masks. So the outdoor education, but in terms of facilities, we have aging buildings, and definitely they need and have systematically being upgraded. But now the rush is on to get as much done as possible before September 14th and to carry on thereafter until everything that can be done is done.
I just take note of the Prime Minister's announcement, sorry, Mitzi, of $2 billion, $740 million for Ontario in 2 tranches. And part of the money was to be dedicated to better ventilation. So it may well be that TDSB and the Catholic Board applied for some funding along those lines, because Lord knows that's been needed an upgrade for quite a while now. Sorry, Mitzi.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and we appreciate those dollars coming into the boards. I think it's about timing as well, because school is starting within the week, and some of this work is going to be happening simultaneously while students and staff are there. I do want to add some context for our 2 French language boards, CS Viamond and CS CS Mon Avenir, because I did have a chance to speak with both of those trustees from the French board and the public board on this specific issue, which has come forward to my office as a concern from parents. They too have been working on it. They have upgraded the airflow system where possible to make sure that there's fresh air coming through the building. And where there's been challenges doing that, they've purchased HEPA filters for classrooms to circulate and clean the air that way. And also something that is really big for probably across our school boards is that the windows are now going to be open to allow the circulation of fresh air. And that's something that has been ongoing, because that we have to pay attention to that. It is one of the key ways that the virus is transmitted.
Okay, let's get back to the questions that are coming in here. And this is a question that I don't understand the import of, but maybe either of the trustees might understand. And the question is very simple. When will teachers know if their requests for accommodations are accepted? I'm not quite sure what that means, but either Nancy or Zakir might actually know.
Can I direct this question to Cheryl, because she's our superintendent and I think she's best equipped with this answer.
Okay.
Hi there. As I said, right now, some of the things that we're working on, the registration, but we've also recently completed a survey of all staff, asking them if anyone requires accommodations because of their health or other circumstances, personal family circumstances. And this is important because this will be able to help us better understand who are the teachers that are going back to the physical in-person school, and who are the teachers that we are likely to use to do our virtual school. So they're going to know very soon. I know that that's likely to happen towards the end of this week or the beginning of next week. But that is something that Employee Service is working on. It's a key question because it really makes a difference for our staffing for either type of school.
Nancy, is your answer about the same?
Yes, very, very similar. Our human resources staff have initiated that survey and are working in response, and everyone's circumstances are different, and we wanted to give our staff that opportunity to let us know, indicate what their needs are, what their preferences are, so that as much as possible, things will be accommodated and taken care of.
Okay. Now, as you know, students have recesses, and students go home after school, and students leave school grounds, and they usually do it in groups, hordes, some might say. And this question is, given the increases in people, I'm assuming here students, improperly assembling during changing phases, are there plans to have a specialized task force to make sure businesses are continuing to be safe? So I'm imagining from that question, kids coming out of, I'm thinking Laurier Collegiate, and then going across to the plaza, and they're doing it 5, 10 at a time. So is there some directions going to be given about that particular issue? Nancy, Zakir?
Yeah.
Hi, John. And
John, Dan, maybe you'd like to comment.
Okay, Nancy, you're on.
If our good neighborhood policies would come into effect here, where we want to be good neighbors with local businesses, and the students exercise proper distancing, and for going to pick up takeout, for example, or something like that. I'm not entirely sure if that's the question, but certainly I know our principals are very community minded, as I'm sure Toronto District principals are, and they build relationships with local businesses, and no doubt would be in communication over that.
Here?
I'm sorry, John, maybe if I can just jump in here, just, you know, the city does have guidelines for businesses about how many people can be in a business, and that applies to whether they're an adult, a child, a teenager. You can only have so many people in a grocery store, a restaurant at any given time. We still expect businesses to follow those guidelines, whether school is in or out. And we do have our municipal licensing staff that will be enforcing those bylaws for businesses. And if people do have any concerns about that, or businesses around how that is enforced, they can contact my office, once again, by email or mail or telephone.
Okay. Zakir, got anything to add?
yes, John, we had this discussion with the staff. So one of the protocol what staff has suggested us, and what they will follow, is once you are out of the school and when you are coming back to the school, you have to go through the screening process. So additional precautions are taken at the school level, and for sure now we have new frontline workers, and that's our teachers and our principals, vice principals, and they will make sure that the safety protocols are met.
Okay. Now this person is concerned about custodial staff, and they say that there's roughly, and this is for the Catholic Board actually, the TCDSB has cut its staff to roughly 800 people for 200 buildings. And the question is, how is this employer expecting the custodial staffs to properly maintain a safe, clean environment for our students and other staff members when it's already near impossible to do before the pandemic? So over to you, Nancy. How do you want to handle that hot potato?
Thank you. By increasing staff, not just expectations and cleaning of high-touch surfaces several times a day, but by increased staff. And in terms of the numbers of additional caretaking staff, and I ask Mr. Koenig if he has any statistics on that, what we're working towards.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. So even over the last, I don't know where the reduction's coming from. We actually, the Board of Trustees, when the last central agreements came through, and there might have been reductions, they voted to keep the staffing levels the same. And so we've been able to keep our support staff and our caretaking staff numbers exactly the same over the last 3-4 years. We are now, with the additional funding, conducting a hiring blitz for all of our support staff and for teaching staff. And we're looking to increase our caretaking staff, especially in those high-risk areas that have been identified by Toronto Public Health.
Zakir, I'm assuming the answer is similar for the Toronto Board?
Yeah, you're right, John.
All right. Well, that was a short answer. So
we need to take as many questions as we can.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, we are kind of we've gone past an hour, and I do want to start to wind this down, but all of you have been very direct and helpful with your questions, and this is an extraordinarily difficult decision for parents. I can't imagine that anyone thinks this is easy. On the issue of French teachers, and again, I'm reading from somebody who's interested in this issue. Given the remote environment, doesn't this increase the opportunity to hire teachers from remote locations and perhaps other provinces, given the constraints of hiring qualified French teachers? Who wants to take that one up?
I can start.
Okay.
I think this is a concern about our French immersion program and probably our extended French program. Our goal is to be fully operational with it, but every school board has experienced difficulty in the past few years being able to secure enough French teachers. And I don't think we're any different this year, but I know that that's our goal, and that's what staff are working towards as best they can. As for hiring people from maybe other French-speaking areas of the world, they of course have to be able to come, well, maybe not remotely, but if they wanted to teach in person, of course they have to get here, and we all know that travel and it takes a while, and a 14-day quarantine period and so forth. So that's a bit complicated. But Mr. Coney, how is our French immersion program doing?
Yeah, we have been able to staff in the face-to-face situation, all of the retirements, et cetera, leaves and things like that. But we're going to have difficulty, and this isn't a Toronto issue. It's a provincial, it's a national issue with the number of French teachers. So really, it's we need to increase within the faculties the numbers of French teachers that are available to hire, because every board is out there and recruiting and trying to get as many as they can to ensure that we run quality extended French and French immersion programs. So it's going to be difficult in a virtual environment to do core French, to do French immersion and extended French programs. So we've been trying to be very honest with parents that in the virtual environment, it will be difficult to staff specialty type programs.
Okay. Zakir?
Yes, John, since I've been trustee for the last 2 years and I've been sitting on Hvac, Finance, Budget and Enrollment Committee, the biggest challenge what we have seen for French teachers is retaining. It's not about recruitment. Recruitment is, we can recruit, but to retain them, it's the biggest challenge what I have heard from the staff. And how we can resolve that issue is the biggest challenge for us. Yes, the virtual model we are talking about, why don't we recruit people from remote areas? But it's a challenging, and you can ask Cheryl, and Cheryl can back me up on this, how much challenges we have to retain those French teachers. Cheryl?
He's asking me because in my past life, I was the French immersion teacher, and then I became the principal of a triple track school, French immersion, early immersion, extended, and English. And I can tell you that when I first became a principal, I ended up having to teach my own French immersion classes because I had such difficulty hiring. And this was many years ago. So and that difficulty continues. I think part of the challenge that's happening is that even though there is a little bit of an opportunity, because the virtual class sizes will be a little bit bigger than the in-person, there still are limits on class sizes because teachers, of course, their working conditions, their contracts. So while it might sound like, oh, it's in remote, so it's okay, we can have, there are still limits on the class sizes, and we're still having this difficulty provincially with hiring and retaining French teachers. So that is true. But we've made a commitment. We have made a commitment to do French immersion and our core French online as well.
So, John, I do want to just, because I promised the French trustees I would chime in. This is a very relevant question for them as well. It was raised with me when I spoke to them last week that there is a tremendous shortage of French teachers in the province, and as Dan and Cheryl have said, there's all boards are competing, including the full French boards.
That pre-pandemic.
That was pre-pandemic. It's an ongoing issue and requires many solutions, including attracting people into the province, including attracting young people with bilingual capability into the profession.
Well, I'm sure if Cheryl was my French teacher, I would be much closer to bilingual status than I am currently. I do recall doing a French language lab test, and about three lessons in, the professor at the time came over the microphone and he said to me, "Mr. McKay, you don't seem to have much of a talent for this language, do you?" Therein lies my talents for French. Let's finish off with the perennial question for Scarborough, namely the TTC, our favorite institution. So this person is rightly saying anticipates higher ridership in September. What measures has the TTC taken in preparation? So maybe we start with Paul, then finish with the trustees, and then I'll call on each of you to do a little wind up. So Paul?
Sorry about that, John. Didn't want to mute right away, or unmute. Yeah, so the TTC, one of the largest transit systems in North America, has been very extensively cleaning. I was just on a bus about a week and a half ago. They've reduced the seating areas that you can utilize so you're social distancing properly. We're getting as many vehicles on the road as we can, anticipating an increase in ridership in the fall. We've also just recently announced the Eglinton East corridor from Kennedy subway station to the University of Toronto Scarborough is going to become a bus rapid transit line. It's recognized as one of the highest used transit corridors actually in North America, not only in Toronto. So we put a bus rapid transit line in there to increase the capacity and ability of people to get from point A to point B, both work and school. We're doing everything we can at the TTC to ensure, as I said, we get people to point A to point B and safely, and recognizing the social distancing measures that need to be adhered to as well.
Okay.
Before we go to our trustees, can I add to your question, in addition to the TTC, what are they doing in the boards for busing and moving students around?
Okay. Secure.
Okay, John, I'll answer both of the questions. So we encourage all of our students, right, to follow the public health guidelines, right? And that's more important right now. Since this pandemic started, public health guideline is kind of a lifeline for us. We have to follow those things, right? So we are encouraging all those students to follow the public health guidelines, use your mask as much as possible, keep social distancing as much as possible. Take all precautions. We can't play with this pandemic. And we've been doing good since March when this started. Our TTC was never stopped. Yes, there will be increased ridership next month, so we have to add more precautions to it. So we are encouraging our students to take those public health guidelines, and then I think we will be good. I think we are doing good, and we will overcome this.
Okay. Nancy?
Thank you. Our board, along with the public board, belongs to the Toronto Transportation Consortium. So our school buses are and drivers of school buses getting ready for the year. We have communicated consistently to parents that for the first week, so that for us will be starting September 14th, our special education students are being transported to their schools, and our full transportation service will be following starting on September 21st, the Monday the 21st. So we are also supporting, and it's great to see what the city has been doing, active transportation, walking, biking, skateboarding, going in small safety groups, socially distanced, to get to school. So that is encouraging at the same time, but those who need the bus transportation, that is our staggered approach this year. Mr.
Okay.
Koenig, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, just for us, we're beginning with our special needs students as well, that they'll be a priority with our busing for the first week, beginning of September the 14th, because they will be attending every day. So that's one of the key aspects. And then we will stagger in the rest of the students as well for using our regular transportation. And with TTC, we're working as well, because with the adapted model for secondary, they will be done their face-to-face at 11 o'clock. So we're working with them to see if their schedules can align, so that as they come, as the students are released from a large secondary school, that there'll be more TTC buses at that particular point in time.
Okay. Well, this has been a very, very good discussion. I hope we have explored some areas that are helpful to parents contemplating the very difficult decision of how to send their children back to school, when to send their children back to school, where to send their children back to school, and you say maybe even if to send their children back to school, and many of the issues that go with it. Let me just go in reverse order and ask Nancy, and then Zakir, and then Paul, and then Mitzi to do a 30-second wind-up and get across the final message, if they wish, to their constituents. So, Nancy?
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you so much for organizing this town hall. The three levels of government, federal, provincial, and municipal, along with the trustees, it's been great. And to the constituents who've been listening and sending in your questions, I want to leave with a message of hope that together we can continue to cope with this virus, learn new ways of behaving in a pandemic, and carry on with what our students need. They do need community, whether it's in person or online. They do need community. They need that way of learning together, and let's do it. Let's provide them the best that we can. If you'd like to contact us at Toronto Catholic, we have a wonderful website with very up-to-date information, www.tcdsb.org, and myself, Nancy Crawford, at tcdsb.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Zakir?
Thank you, John. First of all, I'd like to thank all three of you for doing an incredible job in Scarborough-Guildwood. You are the best leaders, I can tell you that. And to Mitzi and to Paul. And Paul was always on top of the information. Mitzi was there. You were there. So I'd like to thank three of you. And Mitzi, thank you for organizing this town hall. I also like to thank the staff. Thank you, Nancy, for coming in. Dan, thank you very much for coming in. Kurt, Cheryl, thank you for joining us, giving us important information. To the parents, yes, this conversation is about anxieties. We are not sure what's going to happen, but I think we have to be together. If as a community we come together, I think we will overcome this. Just be positive. Keep those social distancings, all those public health guidelines provided to us by all three levels of governments. If we follow those things, I think we will go through this very easily. I cannot say easily, but we will do it smoothly. Let me put it that way. And just be positive. Have a very positive conversation. When we talk to each other, respect each other's stance on going to virtual learning, going in class. Everybody has their own perspective. Keep the conversation going, a positive conversation, and I think we will be fine. And again, thank you everyone, the staff behind the scene who is organizing this. I'd like to thank you guys, everybody. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thanks, Zakir. Okay, Paul.
Okay. Thank you, John, and to yourself and Mitzi, to Nancy, Zakir, Kurt, Dan, Cheryl, for everybody joining us tonight. I think, as I was speaking to somebody earlier, going back to March when this pandemic first started, and we were all on a very steep learning curve. And I think we've come a long way from then. From there, establishing, a very comprehensive set of guidelines that we need people to follow, including masks, social distancing, and I think that's reflective in the numbers of COVID cases that have been continually on the decline. We're in stage 3 now. My wife and I, we have 3 children of our own, 2 in university and 1 going into high school. So I truly understand the anxiety felt both by parents and students. And I think that we've had a very informative evening. Once again, if people have concerns, they can reach out to me at paulinesley.ca, contact my office by phone or email, and I'd be very happy to address any concerns or issues that you might have. And I think we're all in this together, and we're going to continue representing Scarborough-Guildwood and the residents to the best of our ability. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening, and stay safe and stay well. Thank you.
Mitzi?
Thank you. And I won't repeat everyone's name. Just thank you to the team for just all of your insights that you've offered today. And I hope that it has given our viewers and the students, the family members, and the educators that are on the line a little bit more comfort that that we are in this together, as Paul has said, and we want to ensure a safe back to school, and that students and staff are well through this process. It's a tremendous moment. Back to school is such an important time in our province, in our city, in our community. I know as the former Minister of Education, I didn't have to deal with a pandemic planning, but I knew very much that preparing for back to school was such an important moment. And right now, I do believe that the boards and the staff within those boards are doing the best that they can. We've heard from our 2 English boards tonight. I've spoken to the 2 French trustees as well, and I hope you hear that everyone is working to ensure a safe back to school. But there are anxieties. There are anxieties from students themselves, from parents, and from the teachers and the education workers. And we've heard some of that come out in our questions. And I want to say to those education workers, to the custodians that are there, making sure that there's sanitization and deep cleaning of those facilities, to the teachers that are preparing the classroom spaces and all of the social and physical distancing that is happening to get our schools ready, to the staff, those secretaries and administrative staff that welcome and greet parents. Parents, if your child has a cold, don't send them to school. Gone are the days that you're able to just make a judgment and send them to school. You have to keep your child home if they are sick in any way. And we want to make sure we keep those school environments COVID-free, and everyone has to work together to get that done. I know that we can do this. If we work hard and we do all of the right things in terms of our public health advice, hand washing, making sure masks are worn, and also staying home when you're not feeling well, and getting tested if you're uncertain, that we will defeat this virus and we can move on with the real focus of education, which is the right of every child in Ontario, every student, is to have a good education, and a good public education is our commitment as well. So I do want to say thank you to my colleagues in the riding, to Paul and to John. It's really wonderful working with you, and we actually talk to each other on a weekly basis to figure out what more we can do to respond to the needs of our constituents, the needs of the residents, and to the needs of our community. And we felt that this topic at this time was so important. Thank you so much to our trustee colleagues also, who we talk to frequently. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And I know you're hosting your own town halls and your own meetings, and you took the time to be here tonight and to bring very capable team on the staff level as well. I want to let everyone know that my constituency office, as of tomorrow, will be taking appointments. We're virtual since the beginning of the pandemic, but we are going to be trying this new format. So if you need to meet with me, you need to meet with my staff, you can contact my office and just book an appointment, and we will be able to address any concerns that you have to the best of our abilities. And thank you as well to the staff in all three of our offices for all of the work that they do to prepare for these meetings and making sure they run smoothly. And of course, to our fantastic MC and for tonight, John McKay, thank you as well.
Thanks, Missy. Yeah. I don't know how fantastic, but we'll go with fantastic. I do want to thank staff and colleagues for this evening, but most of all, I want to thank those of you who made the effort to send in questions, because the idea of this entire exercise is to address your questions. And I thought that the level of discussion was actually quite deep and profound and honest and transparent, and there is struggles. There's no question but that there's struggles as to what's the right decision in these circumstances. So I want to thank the trustees in particular and their staff for the way in which they've struggled with arriving at the right answer. And there is the idea that we're trying to do the best for all of us. So with that, be safe. Never has being safe been such an important phrase. So take care, and let's hope that this launch into the new school year goes as smoothly as possible under the circumstances. So good evening, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Thank you. Be safe and so well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks again.
Have a great back to school.
Thank you. 15th of September.